Here in New York, Eli Honig, you've been looking at what we just got. What do you see?
Yeah, first of all, big picture, this is momentous. This will be one of the most consequential prosecutions in our country's history, if not the most consequential. This indictment goes right to the core of our democracy. And I think it's helpful. There's a section in the indictment where they break this scheme down into 5 distinct parts. First of all, they say this all started with false claims of election fraud. And it's really important to note, DOJ says explicitly Donald Trump knew that he lost. He made knowingly false claims. Second, they launched this 7-state strategy to pressure state and local officials to overturn the results. Third, they weaponized, to coin a phrase, the Justice Department to try to lend its heft to these false claims of election fraud and to try to pressure states. Fourth, they pressured the vice president, Mike Pence, to do something that they knew was unconstitutional and illegal. And finally, they tie in the actual January 6th violence. And here's what the allegation is, that Donald Trump and his co-conspirators, not charged in this indictment, quote, exploited the disruption by redoubling efforts to levy false claims of election fraud. So that's sort of a 5-chapter assessment of how DOJ sets up these conspiracies that they've charged here.
The importance of them saying, the government saying that Donald Trump knew they were false is, I mean, that's big.
That goes right to his intent. We've talked about it so many times. They are alleging Donald Trump absolutely knew that these claims of election fraud were false, or at an absolute minimum, any reasonable person should have known. And based on my first quick reading of this, they make quite a powerful showing to that effect.
Alyssa, that's one of the questions we had been asking based on who they were calling in to speak to investigators is, do they have people who can say what was going on in the head of Donald Trump, that they had evidence that he knew?
Right, and I include myself in that, having shared that he shared with me he knew he lost the election. I want to note one thing. This is the 3rd indictment of the former president, but the first for actions during his time as president. So that in and of itself makes it a historic moment. What I think he is going to hate in reading this is that, frankly, his best legal defense is going to say, I was too foolish and ignorant to know that I lost the election. I did not understand our democratic process well enough to know that these schemes do not work, that I do not have the right to engage in what my lawyers are presenting. Frankly, pleading ignorance and stupidity is the best legal defense, and he's going to hate that. But one thing that I think is kind of remarkable about this moment, the 3rd indictment, he's got muscle memory now. I'm just looking at the first statements coming out. His allies are lining up around him. Sitting members of Congress, senators are defending him. They are coordinated. They have decided what the line is. This is about Hunter Biden. It's the weaponization of the DOJ. He was ready for this. That's a scary moment for our country.
Ben?
Look, I feel kind of sick. You know, I think for all day it was kind of almost this giddy feeling like, oh, he's going to be indicted, he's not going to be indicted. It didn't. When it actually happened, I remember sitting here with January 6th and watching the violence, watching what was going on and being shocked and appalled. And if you had told me it would take 2.5 years before we as a country said, that's not good, President Trump, that's not good. I mean, if you ask a 5th grade class, can you cheat, can you lie, can you defraud, can you use violence to get your way? A 5th grade class would say you can't. Well, the federal government just told Donald Trump, you can't do that. And what I like about this indictment is it's just that simple. You are a fraudster, sir, and you can't do that. You lied. You can't do that. You tried to cheat. You can't do that. I think normal Americans can understand this and will understand the gravity of what just happened.
Jeff Duncan, do you believe it?
Donald Trump's situation just went from a friendly game of checkers to a game of cutthroat 3D chess, right? He now has a list of co-conspirators that are going to literally be fighting for their own freedom, and they don't really care to be in the cool kids club anymore like so many people fell victim to. I think his situation gets even more complicated because with one indictment, it maybe feels like you can explain political, pent-up energy behind it. Then 2, now 3. He's also caught in between a rock and a hard place. He's, in some instances, saying he didn't do something. In some instances, he's trying to use the guise that he was president and he was protected. And so he's bouncing back and forth, and I think it's just going to continue to weigh on him.
You know, this one's different. This is different from the indictments we've seen before. It's very different from the hush money payment case. It's also very different from the classified documents case. I mean, when you read this indictment, there are sections in here about the way our Constitution works, the way we cast and count our electoral ballots. It doesn't get more fundamental.
I mean, this strikes at the very heart of our democracy.
Exactly. That's exactly what it does. And they make a point. And another important point that is made right up front in this indictment, they say there are legal ways you can contest an election. They make a point of saying that.
Right. It even says on the second page that he has the right to make false statements. He has the right to lie about the election results.
I think what is, I think most striking is that the other cases, they're only historic because this doesn't usually happen. You know, the president stole some documents, maybe he did something bad with them, he's lying about it. You got to slap him on the wrist. You got to do something because it's wrong. He's impeding justice in the porn star case. You got to, but these are kind of technical things. There's actual harm to our country if this type of thing becomes normal. If anybody who's...
I mean, this is essentially a coup. I mean, we would look at this in any other country
you would
and say this was a coup attempt.
If you look at this indictment, this is describing a coup attempt in our country. And so this is the 100 years from now that everybody's going to know about and look at. And if he gets away with it in our court system, shame on us. But this is the biggest, to your point, it's probably the biggest prosecution in the history of the country.
Well, and it resonates with the public because we all saw the footage on January 6th. You knew how you felt. You know how even allies who are now defending him came out and condemned him that day. It's hard to argue with it, but to underscore what you said, I think of our adversaries abroad. I think of our allies abroad. It shows that democracy is a fragile thing, and it is not something that we can necessarily expect we're going to have if half the country is refusing to accept these realities.
Could you imagine being 78 years old after being the president of the United States and waking up just a few short years later, dealing with these indictments and just coming to reckon with what that actually feels like? I mean, whether Donald Trump feels it or not, I don't know. But the average American doesn't see that as a goal in life, to be 78 and to be in multiple indictments across state and federal levels, and it continues.